In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a Valentine's Day banner using a Cricut Maker, Ironon, and burlap. You can find a full list of materials that you'll need for this project and a link to the project in Design Space in the description below. So here's what the project looks like in Design Space. I've included a link to this project in the description so you can make it as well. The heart is a free image, but the pennant I think that you have to pay for. But if you have Cricut access, then you can make this project for free. So really all I did was I found this pennant image in Design Space, and then I just added the heart by clicking on shapes and then adding in the heart. So it's that simple to make. If you want to make it, all you have to do is click on the link below and it'll take you right to this project. So to get started, we'll apply our materials onto the mats. I'm first going to apply the burlap onto the fabric grip cutting mat. If you have never worked with burlap before, just know that it is a little messy, but we'll just get it applied on the mat here. I'll start by just pushing with my hands, and then I am going to grab the brayer tool. This tool works really well if you are applying fabric onto a mat, and I'm just going to push. We don't want there to be any material that's like bulging up, so make sure everything is flat down on the mat. Then I'm going to trim a little bit over here with my fabric shears because I don't want that to get cut in my Cricut. So just be aware of anything that could get stuck. We'll take the brayer tool again and then just push down. Okay, so we're all finished. That's what it looks like. It is stuck really well onto the mat. In Design Space, and we're gonna have to search for burlap. We'll come to Browse All Materials, and then we'll just type in burlap, and we'll click that setting, and then click Done. To cut the burlap, we're going to be using the rotary blade, which comes with your Cricut Maker. This is what it looks like if you haven't used it yet. So we'll just put that into the Cricut. Then we'll load our burlap in. And then we'll get cutting. Alright, so it's all finished. We're gonna hit the unload button. Next, we're going to cut our iron-on and apply it to the mat. You can definitely just use the scissors for this, but I like to use my portable trimmer when I am cutting paper or iron-on vinyl, just because it keeps everything straight. So I'm just gonna cut mine to the correct dimensions. Now we're going to apply the iron-on to a standard grip cutting mat. When you do this, you always want to make sure that you put your iron-on face down and that you mirror the image in Design Space. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But when you have your iron-on, there'll be a shiny side and then more of a matte finish side. You want to put the shiny side down. This is the front of it. So shiny, matte. Same thing with this one. Obviously, you know this is the front of the iron-on and this is the back. So we'll always put it face down. Then you can take your scraper tool and burnish it onto the mat. You can also use a brayer tool if you prefer that. Either one will work. Now we're going to switch out the rotary blade for the fine point blade, which is the one that comes with your machine. So just load that in. And then before I actually get it loaded, I'm going to go to Design Space and change my cutting settings. As you can see, when you come back to Design Space, it's going to say that your material is still set to burlap, and we do not want it to cut on the burlap setting. So you can just click on here, and then we'll browse again, and we're going to type in pattern and click on pattern iron-on and hit done. So now that we have it set to iron-on, the last thing that we should do is mirror our image. Even though it's a heart and by mirroring it, it's going to be the same thing, I always like to just mirror it just to get in the habit of doing this. So you just click on mirror and then hit done. Alright, so now that we've changed our setting, we'll get it loaded into the machine and get cutting. To remove the iron-on from the mat, I'm actually going to flip the mat over and bend the mat back while I hold the iron-on straight. And then we'll get the white iron-on placed down. Remember again, we're putting it face down. We're going to change the cutting setting one more time in Design Space because we're not using pattern iron-on, but we're using everyday iron-on. So again, you can either click here or you can click on this drop-down arrow and then search for everyday iron on, and we'll click on it and then click done. And one more time, we'll just click edit here and mirror the image and hit done. Now we'll remove the burlap from the mat. Again, this is going to get a little messy. I'm just using my fingers to pick it up from the mat, but you could also use a spatula or even the weeder tool to help you pull it up off the mat. One quick tip here, always, always, always clean your mat before you finish your project. Okay, so now we have our iron on. I'm actually just going to trim the hearts so that they're all separated. The white will be a little harder to see. Yeah, it's a little bit too hard to see, so I'm actually going to weed that one first. So when you're weeding, I always like to start in one of the top corners and work my way down. And when you're weeding iron-on, remember you're not weeding from the shiny side, but from the matte side. So I like to start in one of the top hand corners, kind of dig in a little bit, but just like that. And then I'm just going to rock side to side, pulling down on this angle. And eventually grab my fingers. Weeding iron-on luckily is very simple. And then just pull away. Now I'm going to cut them into chunks. I just didn't want to cut the iron-on and wreck it. And then I'll weed these quick. Remember, you're weeding from the back and not from the front. Alright, so that's the last one, and now we've got them all weeded, and now I'm going to grab my Easy Press and we will get transferring these to the burlap. To figure out our settings for our Easy Press, I am at the Cricut Heat Guide, which is on the internet, and I will link that below for you. It's super easy to use and I highly recommend it. Definitely don't go without this if you have the Easy Press. So all you do is come in here and you click on your machine, so I have the Easy Press 2. And then select your heat transfer material. So I'll be working with the everyday iron-on, and then our base material is burlap. And then we'll click on the Easy Press mat. You can also use a towel if you don't have a mat, and then click apply. And as you can see, it lays everything out for us, time, temperature, and extra instructions that are really important, like preheating, having firm pressure, doing a warm peel. So if you have an Easy Press and you do a lot of heat transfer projects, definitely use this guide. I'll link it below for you. Okay, so now that we know what to set our temperature to and for how long, I'm going to turn on the Easy Press and we'll set it to 305 degrees, which I actually have it on, for 30 seconds, so it's perfect. We'll let that heat up, and then I'll grab my first piece of burlap. If you have any like extra pieces of burlap hanging around, make sure that you get rid of those. Alright, so we're all preheated here, and it says to start by preheating the burlap for about 5 seconds. And then we'll apply the iron-on. And then we'll apply the Easy Press again, and it says firm pressure for 30 seconds. Okay, now that it's finished, we're just gonna flip it. Careful, it's hot. I'm gonna flip it with my weeder tool. And then we'll heat the back for 15 seconds. Alright. And now we are going to wait for it to cool a little bit. It says to do a warm peel, so we'll just let it cool down. It's pretty hot right now, but once it warms or cools down a little bit, we'll peel off the liner. Okay, so now that these have cooled down a little bit, we're going to peel off the carrier sheet, which is this transparent sheet. It should be just that easy to peel off. If it's not, you'll just have to reapply your Easy Press again on the top and then on the back as well. I'll try and do this a little closer up. I'm having to pull a little bit, but it shouldn't be too hard. It should be just that simple. Okay, so there's the white ones, And now we'll do the pattern one. Okay, so to be entirely honest with you guys, I went onto the heat guide and clicked pattern iron-on with burlap, and it says not to do it, but I am going to do it anyway, and we're gonna give this a try. I was really bummed when I saw that. I didn't know it, so I'm gonna see if it works. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna keep the same settings that I had for the everyday iron-on, and we'll just see what happens. What have we got to lose? I already cut the iron-on. So anyway, we'll preheat again for just 5 seconds. And then we'll apply. And then I've got firm pressure again for 30 seconds, and then I'll preheat the back. Alright, I'm just gonna let that cool, and then we'll see what happens. It still is pretty warm, but we'll see what happens. Okay, there you go. I'm not sure why it's not recommended, but it worked perfectly. So I still have it at 305 for 30 seconds, and I'll just get the other two going, and then we'll wrap this project up. Okay, so I'm going to turn the easy press off, and then we'll peel this one off. This guy's still pretty hot, but I'm just going to go for it. Okay, so here are all of the little pennants. I'm super stoked that the patterned iron-on worked. I was really sad when I read that it wouldn't. You can apply patterned iron-on to burlap. I did the same temperature and settings as regular everyday iron-on. It was 305 for 30 seconds. Okay, so the last step is just to cut a piece of twine, and then we're gonna hot glue the twine to the back of each of these little pieces. So I'm just gonna start by taking a really long piece of twine, and then just make sure you have enough at the ends. And what I'm going to do is place each one face down, and I'm going to go every other and just space them a couple inches apart. So I'm just going to put a little dab of hot glue and then push the twine into it. And I'm going to actually use my weeder tool again to really push it down because I don't want to burn my finger. And then we'll go to the next one. I would try and keep it as straight as you can between each little pennant. Alright, so we are all finished. And there you go, little Valentine's Day banner made with the Cricut Maker. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our YouTube channel for more Cricut videos. Thanks for watching.